I've been trying to record a video for like 3 days. I was sick, my microphone died, I lost my voice, but now I'm back and I have a very special video for you guys. Today, we're going to be looking at all the builds that I tested prior to winning the national championship with Brand Despia. You're going to see 12 different builds that evolved and changed over time as I was testing. You're going to get a glimpse into how I test, how I changed my cards, and of course, you're going to see how I eventually made it to the finals, winning it all, and of course, the build itself that actually brought me the win. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Let's begin. If you want 5% off any single or sealed product, head over to tierzerogames.com and use code galzo5 at checkout. How's it going, YouTube? Welcome back to another video on the channel, and today we're going to be looking at all 13 builds I've tested in the weeks running up to National Championship 2023. And before we begin, leave a thumbs up on the video, subscribe if you're new. We're almost at 10K. We're definitely getting there, so please subscribe if you enjoyed this content. And of course, comment below once you finish the video. This is the final build. This is how it looked like when I actually played the event. There's a lot of things I would have changed, and I think I'm going to do a video on that in the coming days. But let's see what builds were in contention and didn't make the cut in running to National Championship. And we're going to start off with the first build. I've labeled them on Dueling Book so I can remember and see. And this is one of the things that I would advise you to do as well, is when you change your build as you're preparing for an event, just save another copy so you can go back and look at the previous build and see what actually changed and what you would do differently. So this is the first one. You can already see that I am playing talents here, and one of my newer builds is also playing that, and I would advise you to maybe test it as well. But overall, some notable things here: no crossout. We are playing no ad-lib here as well, which actually we did play in the final list. Tumor Courier with Gold Sark. I think this is one of the points that I mentioned in my deck profile, that I feel like playing Gold Sark with one more Courier is subpar, so I cut it out of my championship list. And I think it was a good call. But if you do play Gold Sark, make sure you play Tumor Courier. Brandon White, really good for extension. The kaiju story was that I changed a lot of kaijus along the way. So the first thought was, I want a kaiju that I can summon in attack position so that I can zero it out with Despian Queritus and just go for more damage. Because if you can get that and a Dragoon, it's almost an OTK. If you get a Dragoon Queritus and a kaiju, it's basically a game. But then I found out, and I'll talk about it in the later portion of the video, that I can't really fuse with this. It's level 8. That is true. It doesn't have 2500 attack, and it's a water monster. Really doesn't work with any of the fusion. So you'll see what I changed it into as it evolved. Then one more note here. You do see the crossout in the side here, which eventually did make it to the main, but the Dark Magician and Shifter package. So my thought process was, I was testing a lot against Super Heavy Samurai and not enough against Kastra, unfortunately. And I think it created some sort of bias in my head, but Shifter, if you shifter the right deck, you win, and you can play under Shifter. But the only thing that you can actually do under Shifter in this deck is go for Dragoon. You just banish this, shuffle it back with Lubellion. It's not affected by the graveyard, so you can do that. Unfortunately, later on, I felt that ending on a Dragoon alone with no graveyard setup means that if you shifter, your opponent starts, you shifter them, passes back to you, go for a Dragoon, hit them for 3000, have one negate on the board. They go again next turn with new graveyard. They don't have shifter anymore applied on their side of the field, and it just felt subpar. So I changed it up. And the next one, and that's build 2. You can see the addition of Drolls, probably because of testing a lot versus Super Heavy and understanding that. Moving Dragoon into the main, which I think was actually the right call, and you're going to see that in in the next video where I fix my build. And Nadir Servant, which is, a lot of people are talking about, is it Nadir? Is it crossout? I think Nadir is solid. I think for this tournament and for the purposes of my deck eventually, crossout was the right call. Talents at 2, which I really like. 2 talents, not 3. Definitely don't want to see more than 1 copy of this. it's really bad to see more than one copy in your hand. And then Pankratops, which I think is a very, very solid card this format. Really good going second, trades 1-for-1 with a negate. You can summon this, attack your opponent's spellcaster, pop, get rid of a Baron, and play freely on main phase 2. And then this card, which I'll talk about in my next profile, I think is a very good, like if you don't play Gimmick Puppet Nightmare, this probably is the best going first card that Brandon can run, especially against the current meta. Current meta is like full Cybers, full Machine, full Psychic, and Tikaboo wins them all. So this was version 2. Version 3, changing up the kaijus a little bit. Then I realized, yeah, I need a light kaiju to fuse into. Adlib is back. Aqua Dolphin was a bit of an overkill because I felt like I was going for like a hand rip, but this deck has too many discards as it is with Quem. You fuse a lot with Albaz. You like hard fuse with Albaz with its own effect. Means you need cards in hand, and this was a bit too much, but this was a really cool build in my opinion. Ash and Crossout package in the side, which was probably like 6 cards for this purpose alone. Might as well be in the main, which I eventually did. And then DD Crow, which is really solid. I felt like at times it was better than Bestials because it got rid of a lot of things that it couldn't, like Bestial couldn't. And like spell cards like, fire monsters for Cybers, it could get rid of Super Heavy Samurai graveyard monsters. So it was good for a while, and of course not once per turn, and doesn't lose to Thrust, but who plays that anyway? Number 4, more hand traps, cross out back in the main, and then we have Sana. One notable thing here is Evenly, which I've tested, and it doesn't work in this format, I think. I think it was a good call to cut it eventually. And then we have Titanic Lad. Notice that all builds are going to have Titanic Lad because it can summon Quem during the end phase, right? You can send this, especially if you're playing Nadir, but you can send this. Quem is a Dogmatica monster. You can summon it at the end phase. It's another interruption. And then the Theater, which I started considering after consulting a few people. Shout out to Lofton who helped me with this. He brought up Theater, that it's a very solid card that you should consider. And eventually I didn't play it, but it's a really good card in my opinion. 5. Back to Nadir, right? Back to Nadir, Bells, and then Nibiru. Nibiru finally comes into the build and stays there until the championship, which was, I think, a good call at the end. Then back to 40, playing the talents and the crossout, which I think is very good. Going down to 2 Ash, so you don't draw too many of them. And Expulsion Gimmick Puppet in the main. This is not far from my final build. Then testing a few Sphere modes, Droll and Lockbird, which I'm glad eventually was in the main. Then Gamma. I'm going to talk specifically about this in this build. Why is Gamma so good? Because you can Brand Fusion freely. If they negate it, Gamma. So there's 2 problems with Gamma, I think, in this build. One, you would always rather normal summon Aluber, normal summon Quem, go for Branded Opening, go for Cartesia, go for a setup, full setup. Like the last card you activate should be Branded Fusion. But this build forces you to activate Branded Fusion as your first card, which is, I think, subpar. You end on a much weaker board. It does protect you, but so does this. It's the same amount of cards, and I think this doesn't prevent you from setting up. So consider that, because I've been seeing a lot of builds with that. Then we were playing Brandon High Spirits. Again, Lofton's recommendation. This requires you to play more Bestials, but it's not that bad to play a lot of Bestials, even though you can't summon them, because they are materials to search every card in your deck, right? High Spirits searches for Quem, Mercurier, Kit, Cartesia, Albaz. Every key card and every extender, it searches for it, right? Also has graveyard effects, really good. At the end of the day, I did test with this a lot. You can see the Theater. It's more of like an anti, don't lose to Ash kind of situation, but I think crossouts at the end of the day were enough. Number 9, readjusting that, getting rid of the Bestials, putting back more hand traps. Side deck is becoming much more complete now. This is very close to the end result of the side deck. Then again, readjusting more hand traps And this was a build that I felt really, really good about. Like the Santas, Pankratops, all really good cards. Gimmick Puppet in the side. But I think at the end of the day, what happened was that, again, I was readjusting ratios. And this is the last before the final build. This is the build number 12 out of 13. Gimmick Puppet back into the main, 43 cards. But eventually, I felt like this is almost one-to-one the side deck that I actually played. But eventually, I felt like I don't need that many hand traps. I need a few other ways to break board. I felt like even though I was hand trapping, I wasn't left with enough juice to play on my turn. And this is where the final build came in, which adjusted. The main thing was Super Poly, which I think wasn't a super good decision in this format, right? It proved itself. It won me my top 4. But you could say that about Crossout as well, possibly. It did win me my top 4. This gave me a little bit of an edge. Masquerade moving into the side. This was a bit of like a championship build, you know, when you start siding in extra deck cards, because now I didn't have the room because the extra deck was so tight. So eventually I wasn't comfortable not playing this against a lot of decks, especially in my meta or in this specific meta where the meta is like so varied. It didn't feel comfortable playing this. So this was the evolution of my deck. You got like 12 builds out of here. You can build a lot of decks using these templates, and I really hope you use them. I really want to hear down in the comments below, what do you think about this journey, about this process, and of course, what is your process when you're preparing for an event? Last but not least, check out my new sponsor, sleevechief.te. You can use code GALZO5 or the link in the description to get some awesome looking deck boxes, playmats, and of course, lots and lots of sleeves. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.